Wanted to document our first grazing rotation for the year 2024. We started our rotation, I believe, somewhere right kind of where that chicken coop is. And I want to say it was like May 28th, maybe. And we made kind of an awkward rotation where it was really this area through here up around the building. And then back here where this septic tank guard is. And that was kind of the first pass of the rotation, and then we decided to get organized and go ahead and start back here. Now, I had intended to only do a single, rotation through the pastures and then let it rest for 90 days. We ended up with a lot of rains near the end, and, we're getting 2 inches a day type thing, and I just didn't want to move the animals. The place I was moving them to has a pretty wet access point, and to the point when we did move them, and this is after the rains, that I ended up having to use 4-wheel drive. Like, my truck actually got stuck in 2-wheel drive and was not able to transit without going into 4-wheel drive. So we're walking over here kind of to where, air quotes, the start of the rotation really was, at least when we were doing it methodically. And the sheep were moved every day during this rotation. We were shooting for just 1 day's food, and I was estimating that at something like a 50 by 50 square, so 2,500 square feet. And then we'd just, like, say, once a day we'd move. I think I did try 1 or 2 places. I had a go at moving them twice in a day. But, the tough part there was actually me, just, being able to get out there and actually go do it in a timely manner. So I wouldn't swear to it, but I'm pretty sure this area started out, the official rotation is probably going to be, let's just say, April 5th or so. So we started here on April 5th and, began marching this way. Out here, kind of as an aside, the previous owners had some wild morning glory, or bindweed, and I've got to figure out what to do with this stuff. I went and mowed this with a lawnmower. You can see it down, you can see it down here. So I mowed this down because it was about knee high, and I couldn't spot the bindweeds. I can see it now, although this is regrown a good 1.5 inches. And it's a real bummer because I had reseeded this in the fall. This area had just a super bad drop off in it, like 18 inches or something, for reasons beyond me. So I reseeded this. We did let them graze it, and it's come back really strong. There's some weeds in it, and you can see where this hay is. It's kind of a definitely weaker, but I had regraded the whole area, and so I probably got rid of a lot of topsoil in that process, right? So it's starting kind of at a disadvantage. You can see the difference in where I mowed to the regrowth, and I'm going on memory, but I think I mowed about a week ago, so it was quite a bit. So yeah, this is like the first 2 or 3 days in, and I figured just walk the pasture so you can kind of see the progression of, when they're grazing. This is probably day 4 or 5 in the rotation, so now we're, again, we're 30-ish, maybe 35 days of regrowth since. And it's above ankle high. But we get out into this area, and the folks that lived here before us had horses on here that were set stocked, and this area out here was an absolute wreck. We're actually starting to see some growth finally. It even in the fall, I brush hogged everything down when we bought the place, and in the fall, I don't think it grew an inch, for the fall growth. Whereas we we were able to get 6 weeks grazing off the rest of the property. Right, so we made almost 2 quick rotations around the entire property, and this didn't grow an inch. And now we're seeing, lots of seed heads, lots of grass coming in. It's small and it's weak. The soil's pretty badly over compacted. So it's definitely a big mess. But I think I see at least 3 or 4 different species of grass down here. There are some clover, not a lot. There's a little bit of clover. There's a little bit of this weed. I'm not sure what that weed is. Forb. Sheep will eat it. We've knocked back a lot of the blackberry. We came through and did that grazing rotation. They definitely did help us get the blackberry knocked way down. Because it was coming in really strong for the spring, and that was quite the frustration, right? I mean, blackberry just takes over everything up here in the Northwest. And so this is probably a week or so into the rotation, I'm gonna guess. And whatever that is, 3 weeks ago. You can see this guy is definitely growing. He's growing quite a bit. We do have some new tips on there. Oh, focus. Yep. It's certainly by no means ready for regrazing, right? And so we've got the sheep off site, and they're going to probably stay off site for the whole summer. So my thought was to let this pasture just go for the whole summer, and see if we can graze it as a winter stockpile pasture, rather than try to come back and graze it before it browns out. I have been trying to control, the only weed I'm really trying to control are, there's some path rush out there, and the Canada thistle, right there. And, I'd sprayed some 2,4-D on it, and some of them are dying, but they're certainly not dead. I almost look like I need to come back with another pass. And that's unfortunate. I was hoping to make a, one and done type pass. This area here had is almost a brush pile, right? The folks before us had just left tons and tons of brush here, dead trees and everything. And just to this side of it, and I don't know if you can see it, intermixed in here, there's some more. This was a 6-foot tall Canada thistle, and it was from kind of the edge of the brush pile all the way down to these bare spots here, was just solid Canada thistle. It's amazing to me that there's any grass here at all, because I didn't see any last year. I mean, not anything. It was just all tons and tons of thistle. And you can actually still see the residues from all the brush hog thistles. Just an incredible volume of Canada thistle. You can see it starting to come back, right? And there was so much of it. That's not at all surprising. Some of it's definitely suffering from when I sprayed it. But I think I sprayed it 2 weeks ago, maybe. So, certainly didn't kill it. It ought to have been crisped up by now, and it's not. So we might need to come back with a little bit higher concentration. So those are really the only 2 weeds I'm trying to control, is the thistle and the path rush, or soft rush, I think it is actually. So here's the back, and the grass is thin, right? He's thin, but it is, some of it is still 12 inches tall. Pretty well everything's seeding out, heading out, and that's fine. Like I said, we're gonna let all of this kind of reseed the ground. The folks before us did not graze this. They just kind of let this be fallow. And when I did brush hog it, it had gotten really thick in the summer. I mean, it was incredible. So I'm curious to see if that'll thicken up the same way. I mean, it looks thinner this year than I recall when I brush hogged it last year. I mean, you can definitely see there's bare spots here, no question. And the sheep coming through this area, it was not a heavy, it was a 1-day pass, and as I recall, this doesn't really look particularly different from when we grazed it. And you can see there is still just a ton of tips left on the grass. There's even blackberries down in there, although that might be regrowth. They definitely put a hurt on a lot of the blackberries. But like I said, there's a lot of tips in here. They didn't do too much on this one. This next area up here, they did clean the forest out for me. So there was a ton of just junk up in the woods back there. And it's amazing. They got rid of basically everything. This area is when I intended to do multi-day moves per day. One of the things I was noticing is as I tighten them up, the ram, I think he's really the only one. But he's teaching some of the littles. Is he will take the grass is greener on the other side approach, and he will just hammer the fence line itself, and you can just see these graze lines where he just absolutely tore it up. And what happened here, and I'm really happy to see this grass coming back the way it is, though there are definitely some messed up spots. This is a pretty wet spot right here. They just absolutely wrecked this area, and that was my fault because I intended to leave them on this little patch here for like 3 hours, and I just got it wrong in my head, and I was going to a training, and I ended up leaving them here for like 9 hours. So they pretty well wrecked it, and I can see the line here, so it's kind of like right here, right, going around that way. And so we're talking like a 25-foot square that they stayed on for the better part of a day. So they're pretty brutal on that, but it's generally recovering, right? I'm probably going to see that stripe for the rest of the summer. So shame on me for that. The area right behind it, right, it did not get grazed too heavily because they spent most of the day on that little patch, and so this is pretty light through here. This area, which I thought was interesting, so the folks before us seem to be using this as kind of an organics burn pile, and I had found a bunch of mint out here, tons of Canada thistle. What else? I had found horsetail. So there was horsetail out here. Yeah, here's some right here. Right, so there's some horsetail. And I pushed the sheep a little bit hard, not terribly hard. I mean, this is, still was plenty of food for the day. With the thought that they'd push the grass down, and to my understanding, sheep didn't like horsetail, or it wasn't good for them, one of the two. But they ate it all. That bit we saw there is the first piece of horsetail I've seen since. Here's another one. So I guess there are some right here. Oh, where are we? Yeah, right there. Some more. I'd rather not have horsetail if I could help it, but they just ate it down to the ground. And so, here's on the other side of this little fence. We need to take this down. That's kind of the grass as left alone state. And I will say, looking at this grass over here compared to what we grazed, I do believe I would have got more forage had I waited longer, right? So I took everybody out into March, and I'm almost wondering if I should not have taken them out until, the second, third week of April. There is quite a bit of regrowth happening, so that's good. But, when I sat down and did all the math, I believe we consumed like 625 pounds an acre of forage, right? And our region supposedly, is normal for like my pastures, for example, should be producing something like 2 tons an acre per year, right? And so that says we basically got a quarter of the year's production with that grazing pass. And I would expect we get something similar, maybe just a bit more in the fall. But that still puts me like way below what I'd expect for the year. And so I think, like I say, I think I went in too early. And, probably knock myself down, I don't know, 50%. So maybe I get 1 ton for the year, 1.5 tons. Or yeah, I think 1 ton, because if I'm only doing 600 pounds, I got a long ways to go to get to even a 1 ton of forage for the year. So that was a bummer. And we put out quite a bit of lime last year. I put out 50 pounds an acre phosphorus. And this was based on the soil tests from the folks before us. They did get the tests, but they never did it, implemented them. And so, that was the previous fall. The big problem we do have is, I put a soil penetrometer in here, and there are just so many places here where I'm at 300 psi, not 1 inch into the soil. And it's not just rocks. I mean, there are a lot of rocks here, but I can go into places where I can push through. It's just wildly overcompacted, in a terrible way. The leased land we're on, it has the same grass species, and the stuff's 3-4 feet tall, 4 feet tall for the seed heads. Right, my seed heads are 12 inches tall at best. So that's pretty well what our walkthrough looks like. We did come back in this area a second time, and again, that was not so much intentional as I just didn't want to deal with all the nasty rains and trying to move sheep, because I don't have an actual animal trailer. I'm using a utility trailer with some cattle panels, so it's kind of a built-up animal trailer, and it works, but it's not something I want to be working in really adverse conditions with. So yeah, this is pass 1 through the pastures for 2024. And like I said, I do believe we're going to just let this sit for the whole rest of the summer. And, we'll look at grazing it again either in the winter or maybe even wait till next spring.